Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we're talking about James and Meitalia. Because after 7 episodes of their constant lying to their families, Tata finally tells her family the truth about her and James's real intentions, which somehow, in a very dramatic way, ends in Tata crying on the floor, begging for forgiveness from her parents. Before we get going, yes, I did get a haircut, thank you for noticing. Do you know how hard it is as a man in America right now to get a haircut that is not the broccoli haircut? I have to tell my barbers every time that I don't use TikTok. I'm not cool, I'm not fashionable. Don't give me the broccoli stuff. Just make it shorter, give me the military cut. Anyway, just had to get that out there. But I'm very excited to talk about James and Meitalia today because there is a very impactful scene that happens in this episode that came out of complete left field to me and explained a question I had about them earlier in the season. So, without further ado, the episode starts off with Tata's family teaching James how to make their banana chips. And while this is a fun little bonding experience for the family, James sees things a little differently because he sees this as an opportunity to impress her family with how good he is at learning their trade. And hopefully, if he's good enough, it will make the family more receptive to them working for the family and earning the income that they plan on starting their lives here in Indonesia with. And of course, because this is James and Meitalia we're talking about, the family doesn't know that that's what the kids are planning and are thinking that they're just being hospitable and fun. Apparently, it's Tata's plan to tell the family the truth about their moving and wanting to work with them on the plantation after they finish this banana stuff.
Tata really wants to tell her parents that we're moving here after my banana chip lesson.
But, James being James, he doesn't want to tell them so quickly. And, in his words, would rather wait until he's more secure here.
After my banana chip lesson. I would rather wait until I feel secure here.
And that is an interesting phrasing on his part. Because something that's been really bugging me this whole time watching their scenes, and especially in the scenes to come later in this episode, is I just don't understand why not tell the family sooner. What exactly is James waiting for before he tells the family the truth? And it's interesting that he says here that he would rather wait until he's more secure, whatever that means. Anyway, the parents show James how to make and flavor the banana chips, and it goes pretty well. He did a pretty good job, everyone's laughing, having a good time. Tata specifically thinks this is a great experience because she can see James approach this learning with a full heart.
I'm just so excited to see him excited to learn because he do it with a full heart.
Which I thought was a pretty sweet thing to say, so I wanted to include that too, not just include all the lying. After the flavoring of the banana chips is done, James is then encouraged to compete with the mother to see who can pack more banana chips quickly.
To race with mom.
Okay. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, go.
The far more experienced mother obviously smokes him in this race, but it was pretty funny and totally unnecessary to me. That's the show that included this scene where Tata's explaining to James why he lost, and her explanation is, it's because you're too fat and your hands are too big.
The problem is your back and your hands too big.
It's not that my hands are too big, it's the bags are too small.
I don't know if big hands equals fat to her, like she meant it in the same way, or if she meant you're just kind of fat and overweight and that's what makes your hands big. They finish the packing and packaging, and now, with final product at hand, James is given a big pat on the back and encouraged that he did a pretty good job.
Bagus.
Yeah. Success. I'm pro already.
The next and final scene we get of them this episode starts off kind of confusing, but ends in a very confrontational and serious way. So, although these scenes of them working in the banana chip factory might seem as if I'm just giving a summary of the events of the episode, I included them for a specific reason, because I think it is very important to see the general demeanor and personality of the parents so we can have some kind of reference to better understand what the hell is about to go down.
Things have escalated very, very quickly.
After they finish the banana chip production, everyone gets together to eat some of the banana chips and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And it seems that the banana chips James made turned out very good. Who knows if the dad is actually being serious and literal here, if James's chips are actually really great, or he's just being very encouraging and supportive. But either way, a good sign from the parents.
Produksi jam kalau dijual lebih laris.
And this is where things get very serious. because this naturally leads into the conversation that James and Tatta have been dreading. Well, really, only James has been dreading it. Tatta still thinks this will go great. Telling the family the truth about their real intentions.
That leads into a conversation we could have with them. So do you want to have that conversation now?
And like I said, this gets pretty confusing and the details here matter, so time to pay attention. First, Tatta tells her family that the two of them are planning to move there to Indonesia permanently. James was very worried about giving them this news, but Tatta, if you remember, thought that this would be perceived as good news. Well, it turns out that Tatta was right, and the family is actually super happy to hear about this news.
Papa sangat senang sekali.
Saya senang banget.
And even says that he would be very proud if James wanted to continue their business.
Saleh bisa.
Later you can make banana chips.
A lot of banana chips? Yeah?
And that should be great news for James and Tatta. But James's primary concern is the money. As he's discovered, these banana chips don't have the highest profit margin, and he's wondering if it's even possible for them to sell enough banana chips to cover their car payments and make a living. James tells them, through Tatta, because she's the one translating this whole conversation, about their $15,000 in debt and the car payment, and the family, again, handles the news very well, as the dad says that he and his wife will think about it more and possibly pay off their debt for them.
Sama
Dad
mama
will think about it
untuk menyelesaikan.
to help you guys maybe pay it off.
James says that he doesn't want to burden the family with that, but the family says that children are the parents' responsibility, they'll help them, as long as they don't go into debt again.
Nanti kalau sudah lunas, dilarang punya utang.
Don't ever take a loan ever again.
James considers that, but responds by telling them that sometimes in life you have to take a loan,
I mean, I would say yes, but sometimes in life you have to take a loan.
which then makes the dad respond about having principles, and if you have a loan, that means the bank controls you, so you should never take a loan, you should always live off what you have, which is a direction of the conversation that I don't think James wants to go down right now. So he asks Tatta to jump into the conversation herself and not just translate.
I mean,
Cita-citanya
you need to help me on this one.
harus
There's
tercapai.
things we need to talk
Yeah,
about.
And this is where things start to go downhill fast. James asks for Tatta to speak up, but Tatta says, I'm doing my best here. I'm trying to talk, but I have to translate. I'm going between two languages. It's hard.
Things we need to talk
Yeah,
about.
but I need to translate what you said to them too.
But James insists and kind of almost judgmentally demands that she jump in.
To translate what you said to them too.
I know, but at this point, you need to join in the conversation. This isn't just me.
So Tatta is now hearing James say twice now that she needs to jump in, while the dad keeps talking in Indonesian because he doesn't understand that they're having a separate conversation in English right now. So he's talking to James, so Tatta is hearing James say this while also trying to translate what the dad is saying, while James is both kind of responding to the dad, but also telling Tatta to jump in herself.
With
Semakin
what
lama
we have.
semakin meningkat walaupun kecil.
I understand, but right now,
Tapi sekarang ya aku ngerti.
Help
Cuma
me here.
karena hari
You
ini
need
tuh, what do you say?
When James says, for the third time in a row now, that maybe she should just ditch the translation and jump in and talk to your dad.
you gotta take control of this one.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
I need to think.
You don't have to translate anymore. Talk to your parents and let them know.
I was trying to.
Okay, I will stay quiet so you can do that then.
And at this point, Tatta seems to be getting pretty frustrated, which I think is completely understandable given the circumstances. And while it seems like maybe James tried a little bit, and once Tatta kind of clapped back and it's like, hey, I'm trying, like, back off, James kind of said, okay, never mind, I'm gonna let you do your thing. At least the way it's edited, because this is edited, we don't know exactly what happened. The very next scene is James saying again, you need to take the lead. You were supposed to be lead on this, I'm not doing this.
I told you I'd follow your lead. I need you to be the lead in this, not me.
I went back and counted, by the way. This is the 6th time that James has said that she needs to step up and start talking.
You need to help me in this one. You need to join in the conversation. Help me here. You gotta take control of this one. Talk to your parents and let them know. I need you to be the lead in this, not me.
And it seems like at this point, Tatta has had enough. She starts tearing up and explains, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to translate between both people. This is a serious conversation. I'm trying to add in when I can. You just keep pushing me and you don't let up.
I'm trying to translate what you say, thinking, translate it to him.
We had this conversation.
Then you push me to talk to.
And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, James has to back off at this point, right? He's made his point multiple times. Tatta's breaking down. She's starting to cry. Now maybe he should be like, okay, I've tried. I've made my points, I've said my piece. But no, at least the way it's edited, he then says, after she starts crying and explaining that he's pushing too hard, that is the reason why he didn't think the two of them were ready to have this conversation.
We had this conversation.
Then you push me to talk to.
And that's why I don't think we were ready to have this conversation.
Which is honestly pretty infuriating to watch. Because this is a difficult conversation. It's an important conversation. And surprisingly, it's actually going pretty well. And yet, it seems like James is throwing all that away to scapegoat Tatta and kinda add a sort of paternal, kind of condescending, talking down, judgment, see, I knew best, I told you so kind of attitude when it just doesn't seem necessary at all.
And that's why I don't think we were ready to have this conversation.
We do. You just need to be patient as you can.
Again, we're always subject to the editing, and usually when something doesn't really make sense to the viewer, I tend to interpret that as the producers were trying a little too hard to paint a narrative that maybe didn't fit perfectly, and they kind of just stitch things together, and the result is we, the audience, has an idea but is pretty confused. So again, maybe my interpretation is wrong here, but at least the way it's edited, this seemed like this conversation was going just fine when suddenly James wanted to double, triple, and 6 times in a row triple down on Tatta not being more active and pushing her to tears. And then when she's at her most emotional and seems to be done with everything, then add this totally unnecessary judgment to talk down to her a little more. And like, oh, this is why we weren't ready.
We had this conversation.
Then you push me to talk to.
And that's why I don't think we were ready to have this conversation.
Like, what are you doing, dude? How does this help the conversation? Shouldn't you be a little bit more embarrassed or ashamed to speak that way to her in front of her family? Even if they can't understand the language, it's kind of feels wrong.
Why, in this moment, in front of my parents, you push me? Say, well, you need to tell them this, you need to tell them this. Like, I am doing it my very best.
And while Tatta's freaking out, the parents are also incredibly confused. You can imagine from their perspective, they're probably thinking that, well, I thought this was good news. This was a good time and a good conversation, and we're working together. Why are you guys now crying? Which also might be kind of a disrespectful element for the parents. Because putting yourself in their shoes, if you're asked for a favor or someone gives you some bad news and you handle it well and with generosity, you're kind of doing them a favor by reacting so well. So when they take it then poorly or they start arguing amongst themselves and start crying, it kind of a little bit shows some kind of disrespect for the favor that you're doing them by being so open-minded. Of course, maybe it was cut out, but you would think there would be some sort of gratitude or sharing in the good news of everything, some more smiles or something like that in response to the parents' generosity. But instead, when they get all snaky and talk amongst themselves and it looks like they're kind of fighting, it's like, hey, I just offered to pay off your debt. And instead of a thank you, you guys are bickering and now crying like, hello? Back to Tatta, she starts breaking down even more and the crying gets worse. She tells the family essentially that she feels very guilty, doesn't want to add more burden to their life, and says that I've already been such a burden to you, I can't keep being a burden even after I get married. Which I think may be a point that a lot of people missed the first time. I certainly missed it the first time, but that is a thing in Indonesian culture, to my understanding. That yes, the parents may take care of and provide for the child, but generally speaking, once they get married, they're kind of no longer the parents' responsibility. So I think for Tatta now to still feel like she's a burden to her parents may trigger some extra shame. That's, yes, I'm your kid, but you shouldn't have to take care of me anymore. I'm married, I should be self-sufficient, and yet I'm not, and I feel bad about that.
Cukup jadi beban dari dulu. Masa iya sekarang udah nikah harus jadi beban lagi?
But the family doesn't seem to reciprocate that, and instead is, again, really warm and accepting, saying that it's okay, we'll take care of you, it's not a problem, and when you have kids in the future, you'll understand and take care of them too.
Kamu kan punya anak, harus tahu jawab gitu. Nanti yang membalas kamu anak-anaknya.
And I think that's the comment that pushes Tatta over the edge, as after this, she becomes completely hysterical and loses all control. Again, this is just my interpretation, but to me, it feels like perhaps Tatta was already feeling bad, guilty, like she's a burden. Even going into this conversation, there were multiple things that she was not disclosing with them, so maybe also having that kind of weight on her conscience. Then they act with even more niceness, which, if you've ever lied to someone that you feel bad about and you get away with it, and then they're extra nice to you about it, you often feel worse because you're doing a bad thing to someone you love. And then when they do even more loving things, you think you're even more of a piece of shit for doing the bad thing in the first place, you know? So already feeling bad and guilty. And then when the family brings up the kids that she will eventually have, knowing in her head that might not actually be true because she's heard that James may not even want to have kids, and she's insecure about that and wonders if James is lying, and she's not telling the parents about that, obviously. I think that is what really pushes her over the edge and is causing a lot of the tears that we're seeing now. I guess it's also kind of like maybe you get an F on a bunch of tests, or you're failing in class and you're lying to your parents about it. And then when you finally tell your parents that you were lying and you're actually failing, maybe they're really cool about it and say, oh, well, that's okay. At least you're passing all your other classes you told us about. But in reality, you're failing all of them too, and they just don't know about it yet. So not only did you get away with the lie, but they're being nice because they don't know another thing you're lying about. So you're just like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever, you know? So Tatta cries. She's completely inconsolable, not just crying, but true heavy, freaking out crying. She keeps saying that she's just adding to their problems and feeling really guilty. The mother goes to hug her in a very gentle, kind way, I think to reassure her. And even the dad has soft body language and seems pretty calm and taps her on the shoulder. And then we get the scene that was a preview in the very beginning of the season about how dramatic this whole season is, where the dad then tells Tatta to get on her knees and kiss your mother's feet for forgiveness. Of course, I can't play the whole scene because of copyright issues, but it's very dramatic. She's crying, there's dramatic music, Tatta's getting on her hands and knees, and the dad is like, kiss her feet, ask for forgiveness. It's very much like, whoa. I'm confused, most of the audience is confused, James is very confused because he feels like this whole thing just went 0 to 100 very quickly and also doesn't speak the language, so he doesn't even know why Tatta's on her hands and feet and what's going on right now.
I feel very alone. God, I'm confused.
And the episode ends amidst all this hysteria. This was a very interesting scene to watch for me, because as I alluded to, we've seen this scene already in the beginning of the season preview. And at the time, this scene looked very much like a maybe stereotypical abusive parental situation where the kid does something wrong and the parents completely go overboard and start yelling and screaming and beg for forgiveness and get on your knees. And it seemed like that was the context of what was happening here. Something very angry and possibly abusive. But now that we see the scene with the full context, I actually have kind of the opposite interpretation. Given how nice and accommodating the parents have been this entire time, where they're nothing but supportive and pretty calm, pretty non-reactive, not very judgmental, and even while Tatta is crying and at her most hysterical moments, they seem like they're trying to comfort her. The mom is hugging her, and that makes me wonder if when the dad is telling Tatta to get on her hands and knees and beg for forgiveness and kiss her feet, that isn't meant to be a punishment, but a way for Tatta to get out some of her guilty, anxious energy in a productive, possibly therapeutic way. Going back to the lying about failing classes example, I don't know why I'm choosing that as an example, by the way. Not me. I wouldn't do anything like that. I got good grades. But I can imagine if you do something wrong or you're caught in a lie, you feel really bad and guilty about it, and the parents know that and they see how much you're struggling with your feelings right now. Sometimes just telling these people that nothing is wrong, you didn't do anything wrong, like there was no problem, that doesn't always help because they feel bad. They know they did something wrong. And for you to just tell them that, no, you didn't, everything is fine, that doesn't always gel and really satisfy the emotions. Sometimes it can be more therapeutic to say, yeah, you know what? You did mess up. You should ask for forgiveness. Because that actually gives the guilty feeling person something to do, someplace to put their energy in a way to right the wrong. And then, by going through that forgiveness procedure, they might feel then less bad afterwards and feel like the wrong has been more righted. For what it's worth, I tried Googling what kissing the mother's feet meant in Indonesian culture, and maybe I just wasn't good at Googling, but the only results I came up with is different articles and summaries about 90 Day Fiance and the episode we just watched. So I didn't really learn a lot from that. I did see a Reddit comment that there is a saying in Indonesian culture, which means heaven lies beneath your mother's feet, and is often used in a way to respect your elders and that kind of thing. But while that Redditor pointed out that saying, they were also confused about why the family was doing this and why she was kissing her feet. It's not an incredibly common thing that is very obvious what the procedure is here and why the family is doing it. So maybe I'm completely wrong, but I interpreted this scene as the family actually being pretty healthy and trying to comfort Tatta in the way they know how, by giving Tatta something to do and a way to ask for forgiveness. And not in the traditional yelling, abusive, controlling way that it kind of made it seem like in the season previews. That's my theory on the parents and their behavior this episode. We already talked about my theory on Tatta and why she feels so guilty, especially with her possibly feeling like she's an extra burden because she's married and still needs help from the parents. And now that we've talked about the parents and Tatta, that just leaves one thing. Why the heck was James so mad? Why did James just sabotage this whole relationship and go so nuclear on Tatta for no reason? And I think I have at least one decent theory. Back when James was talking about the car payment and working for the family and making money, one of the things James said is that they have this $700 a month car payment. Will they be able to make enough money to both pay off the car payments and to build a future for themselves here?
Do full-time to make enough money to live here because we have a car.
But after the translation from Tatta, the dad's response was that he and his wife would help pay off their debt.
Dad will think about it
Untuk menyelesaikan.
to help you guys maybe pay it off.
And that doesn't seem to be the point James was trying to make. James tells us in a one-on-one that he doesn't want the family to pay off their debt. That's asking too much of them. He would feel guilty doing that.
Obviously, there's no way I'm gonna let them pay for our car. And I'm not sure if she's just not translating what I'm saying. I just need Tata to really voice that that's not the reason we're here. We don't want your money, we won't take your money.
But that's what the dad's response seemed to be centered around. Paying off their debt, and once we pay off your debt, you can't get into debt again. But it seems like James's point here is, we'll pay off our own debts, we just want to know if we can make enough money working for you guys that we can pay off our own debt.
That's not the reason we're here. We don't want your money, we won't take your money.
If we believe that to be the case, it could be that he is now worried that Tatta doesn't understand that herself or isn't translating properly, and James may be worried that the family is then interpreting James's ask for a wage as him asking for their debt forgiveness. So, okay, maybe there's a miscommunication there. I think we could understand that from James's perspective. But that doesn't quite explain why he mentioned it 6 times to Tatta. You gotta jump in, you gotta do this. I guess we weren't ready to have this conversation, huh? That feels unnecessarily punitive and judgmental from him. And to me, again, this is just a thought, that maybe James, along with his history of lying and not wanting to confront the truth, I think James could be really insecure as a person, or as a man, or as an adult. He's mentioned multiple times how he's worried about not being able to provide for Tatta. And I wonder if he might be so insecure about being seen or interpreted as a weak person, or as someone who can't provide for Tatta, or maybe even isn't good enough for her, that he may become a little blinded by that motivation and in the moments lie to people or push Tatta around or push her too far and make her feel bad because he's just so insecure about how he's perceived that just takes priority over everything else. And then we remember earlier in the episode where he said he did not want to talk to her family until he was more secure here.
I would rather wait until I feel secure here.
Maybe he meant that from an emotional perspective, but it also could be that he doesn't want to go to the family with all of their problems without having a bit more of a bearing or more of an understanding or presenting a better game plan, and was worried that if they just walk out and say it right now, that it maybe makes them look immature or irresponsible. So given all that, I wonder if he might have some traumas around being perceived as irresponsible or immature. Maybe he's got a judgmental family that always makes him feel like the dumb one or the child of the family. Heck, maybe he even is the youngest of several siblings and always has this kind of inferiority thing going on. Maybe the parents were very judgmental or punitive and always made him feel bad or punish him for not being mature enough. And maybe he's learned over time that's better to not tell mom about the failed class and instead just lie about it and do whatever you can to seem like you're very competent and mature and reasonable, as opposed to ever letting these people see that you have some weakness or that you have a problem and you need their help. Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't know if I've explained this perfectly, but I can relate to that on some level. I also feel quite bad at times when I feel like I'm going into something without a full game plan or becoming a YouTuber and quitting my job as a professional engineer to make YouTube videos about reality TV. I was really scared that this would be perceived as a stupid pie in the sky idea and that I must be just deluding myself. I must actually be some big idiots and being very irresponsible and immature, and I should just suck it up and be in a career that I don't want to be in. So I can possibly relate to James on that, but at least for me, I don't think that it's caused me to have some of the coping mechanisms that it may have caused James to develop. I don't lie about things, and I think that that's kind of a bigger sign of weakness to me and my own moral compass. And I view admitting that you have a problem asking for help as a pretty ballsy and courageous thing to do. So if we are similar, maybe we're different in that regard. I think I've said enough at this point. I think I've made my points. I just think this is a very interesting couple and a very interesting situation, so wanted to get all my thoughts out there on it. I did have a lot of speculation in this episode, so some of you may think that I'm completely full of shit or you don't agree. That's okay, I welcome that. Let me know how you interpreted this whole situation. What do you think caused Tata's crying and her emotions? Why do you think James is lying about this and pushing so hard in this conversation? Why do you think the parents made her kiss the mother's feet? What's going on with that? Let me know all your thoughts about this couple in the comments down below. A big thank you to all of you channel members, with an extra special thank you to Nancy Jones for being a producer of this channel. And until next time, I'll see you later.